alive. We're arguably alive. We're like alive. Are we alive? Is this just an experience of the living dead? Are we alive and surrounded by a sea of creatures from the post-apocalyptic zombie nightmare? I'm only kidding, of course, but it's really sometimes arguable how much present we are in our sense of consciousness, and then of course what kind of level of consciousness we are dealing with out there. I sometimes wonder, just also within myself, but also with some of the people that I'm interacting with or are edging it to interact with me. We are alive, and we are on the cosmic bus. And of course, I want to welcome you here today. This is extra. This is getting to be a booty of cosmic bus episodes at the moment. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me. If you're here for the first time, and I know quite a lot of people are coming onto the bus lately because they're all kind of intrigued as what the hell's going on, and maybe this astrology guy can give us some sense of a bearing on what's going on. But let me tell you, I don't have the magic secrets to everything. Unless, of course, I go into investigation myself. And being a very skeptical kind of fellow, and people might say, what the hell is he talking about? He's an astrologer. How can he be skeptical? He's got to be at least a little superstitious. But no, that's not how it happened. I am an incredibly difficult person to convince. And part of the reason why I got into astrology a very, very long time ago is because I was kind of a little flummoxed at the essence that there might be some powers outside of me that could somehow determine my behavior and particularly my ability to make choices for myself. Yeah, just because I was a Gemini or was a Taurian or whatever did not mean that I was going to be a certain way, you see. And so I went into a very extensive study of all these horoscope signs, and I got deeper and deeper and deeper into it. I took a scientific approach, and a scientific approach observes, makes notes, compares, comes back, has a look at things. Of course, to be an astrologer or to be somebody who's studying the metaphysical properties, because they're not physical properties, these so-called what's the word? Coincidences that are happening with the planets and the stars and what's happening in terms of our own behavior. We need to use some extrasensory powers of observation. And so, luckily for me, I was a little bit more attuned to the sensitive realms. I was able to pick up on nuances, and I'm pretty sure that you're in the same kind of boat, even though the social universe, the structured universe, has done its bloody best to try to educate you or slap you out of using your sensitivities, make you feel like you're, crazy sometimes for looking at things that are beyond the visible perspectives of light waves, sound waves. But if you're like me and like to kind of read between the lines, if you're rather less a linear person, more of a conceptual person, then astrology is a very fine tool of diagnosing things. But you've got to get your shit together and you've got to keep your feet on the ground. So one thing about me, I don't believe shit. Right? I don't take beliefs, I don't really sit with beliefs, and I don't really let them determine the outcome of my next 5 minutes. I'm constantly observing, constantly asking questions, and it's very, very wise to maintain your sense of critical perception, even when things just appear like they're obviously so. Yeah, I don't take anything at face value, and always, I stand to ask why. Sometimes there's no why. There's no reason why. Things just happen. Sometimes it doesn't appear immediately obvious. But when you look at things, and I've started looking, you know, when you start to study cycles that are much bigger than, you know, the next 5 minutes, next 2 days, next 10 weeks, etc. When you start to study cycles that are extending beyond 20, 30, 100, 400 years, you start to actually see that there is actually a system, a why behind seemingly random, unrelated, completely accidental or coincidental events. And that's what makes it all so much fun. But you've got to expand the range of vision, and your levels of consciousness need to start rising above the mundane in order to be able to do this very intrepid kind of investigation. Yeah, there are forces, my friends, that are beyond the physical. Yeah, and we have a look at those with you know, planets and planetoids that are beyond our own ability to see with a naked eye, as far as, say, the timelines of Saturn. Saturn is a 29.5-year cycle, but there are cycles that are much bigger than that. Some of them extend beyond one single lifetime. And if we have a look at the patterns that are forming with planets like Neptune and Pluto and beyond, we start to see how they fit into a much bigger dynasty of lifetimes. And as Pluto now comes to the end of Capricorn, and in particular in certain dynasties like the American dynasty, which started around late 1700s, where there was a revolution, and the nation itself incarnated itself as a unique entity. Then we start to see Pluto, after 250 years, is returning to that place, that exact degree where it was around 1776, when there was an explosion, a regeneration, a reincarnation of an entity called this nation, called, you know, the United States of America. And we're seeing now that actually became triggered, particularly around the time when Donald Trump was elected. The transiting Pluto in Capricorn was opposite the sun of the Cancer sun of the United States chart. And as one of the other astrologers put it, it was like the earth had torn open, and, you know, the United States got abducted and dragged down to the pits of Hades, you know, and, you know, this whole thing with Persephone. Where is my child? What happened to my country? What happened to my beautiful, nurturing kind of universe that I knew? Yeah, it's almost like it's been hijacked. It's not an accident, and it's not a coincidence, and it's not something that's just happening at random. There is a reason. And of course, it's going to take us some time to first accept what's going on, but also a little bit more time, particularly once we are given the benefit of hindsight, to be able to look back and understand why it had to happen, you know, because all things come to a point of disintegration. All structures, whether they are physical or they are written in the constitutions that were drafted 250 years ago, are not permanent. They do all come to some sort of a lifetime ending. Yeah. So it's really a lot of those things that are breaking apart, particularly in the Western world, particularly those that are led by the, you know, the culture that's been coming out of America very strongly for the last, you know, couple of 100 years, are now coming to an end. And so there's a shift. Yeah. Where that shift is taking us, what form it's evolving to, whether it will mean the end of America as we know it, whether that will then mean the end of the world as we have come to know the balance of power in terms of who's ruling things, and what we are evolving to as a not just a nation state but as a species, is really quite interesting. And I'll start off on that note, really just to give you an indication that, you know, there are forces and there are timelines much bigger than your own. Yeah. And, you know, I see it in my client work where you know, just looking at some of the conditions that people are carrying into this lifetime, some of the deep-seated psychological inherited traits that they are bringing out into their relationships with the world and the people around them are actually not formed in their own lifetime. In fact, you know, a lot of the conditions and a lot of the psychoses, if you like, that they are operating under are actually more directly attributed to not just their parents, but their parents' parents and the ancestors that came before that, and many of those things are sort of written in the constitution or the family dynastic timelines that are to do with all kinds of very traumatizing experiences, yeah, wars, famines, evictions, emigrations, you know, personal stuff like rapes and abductions and, you know, bits and pieces that are kind of have been held by grandparents that have been resonating in their bodies like a post-traumatic stress disorder that was never really dealt with directly and has harbored something in the deep psychology of that person that they've passed on. That makes it very difficult. By the time you come along, you don't understand why your parents behave the way that they behave, why they seem to react in ways that are very, very intense or very elusive or very abrupt. I don't really understand the nature of that unless we kind of do some research. And then, of course, you know, it's not just to do the research, we need to find healing. Yeah. And healing in my book is learning to let go of the story, the core language that is going through from one generation to another. Yeah. We all carry a core language which is being programmed into us, which in a lot of ways, when planets like Saturn and Jupiter are involved, they're the ones that are actually teaching us how to be part of the greater dynamic, are telling us what we're good at and what we're not good at, what we have enough of and what we don't have, what we're lacking. Yeah. So let's get astrological with it. Saturn really is the one, and you're going to see that backwards because of the Facebook camera that I'm using. But Saturn is that planet of constriction. They call it the Lord of Karma because it needs to lock you into a linear pattern. So as your parents suffered, you will suffer, and you will carry on that suffering because these are the limitations. This is the box that you came in, and this is the way that you assemble all the pieces that came in the box. Yeah, it's not necessarily true, but it's what our parents and our teachers, our preachers, our educators, our governments will have us remember that if we want to be the person that we were supposed to be, according to the pattern that's come from our family line, we've got to be assembled in a certain way. And if you came a little bit scattered, a little bit damaged, a little bit confused, a little bit on the fly. Maybe you came at a time when you weren't expected, or you weren't welcome, or you weren't loved, or you know there was other things going on. You were reminded that you're not enough to meet up with those things. Yeah. Saturn inflicts those things, and of course we can see it in the chart by what contacts Saturn is making to our sun, our moon, our ascendant, and then all the other planets. Yeah, Saturn is constantly there to make things that don't exist. It takes something of an idea, something that's formulating, and it turns it into a specific shape, and it gives it dimensions, and it crystallizes it into form. And then this is happening in your mind, and before you know it, it manifests as something very physical, and it has something very, very succinct, very particular, very, very exact about it. It has a form, it has a name, it has a function, it has orders that you will use, or you can deny. And if you deny Saturn, he gets very, very cross. Pulls out the old stick. And Saturn is very, very punishing. If Saturn sees that there's any element of apprehension or fear about you accepting the reality that's coming your way, well, nasty stuff does tend to happen. We're never really kind of welcoming Saturn into our lives with a sense of, excitement or expectation for something great to happen. It always seems to be that Saturn slows down our reality, crystallizes our thinking. Your thoughts seem to get stuck on a particular thing, yeah? And either you're going to focus and discipline and persevere to understand the parameters of that thing that's coming before you, or you're going to deny it. And I'm afraid to say, it doesn't matter how much you try to kind of hide, sleep your way through it, worry to death over it, unless you're capable of actually coming to meet this thing that's materializing, that's manifesting, it's crystallizing in your life, your mind is going to constantly be worrying, going there, and of course, rather than meet the expectations, you're going to probably fail. Yeah, which means you stand to lose. Yeah, whatever you cannot justify, you cannot prove that is worth having in your life, is somehow taken away from you. Because Saturn's that way. He's a kind of mean bastard. It doesn't really want what you've got. He just wants what you might have, but that he can't have. He craves, very deeply, he craves to have what you've got. He craves your youth, he craves your health, he craves your ability to love innocently, unconditionally, without expectation. And he says, well, if you really love that thing, show me. Show me how much you care. Show me what happens when I put a brick wall in front of it. Show me what happens when I take it away. Show me what you're going to do to get it back. Show me the language. Show me the skills. Show me the tenacity, the force of conviction that you have in order to justify having that in your life. Otherwise, you don't deserve it. So it is a very important part of our reality, yeah? If you can't demonstrate that that is a worthy part, that is a solid part of your life, then it's going to wear away. And of course, in times like this, I say times like this, Saturn, of course, as we know, in January was conjunct Pluto, which actually just forces, Pluto intensifies the crap out of things, right? It just makes something that's already there 1,000 times more pertinent, because it actually puts the entire force of, extraterrestrial energy behind it, yeah? Saturn rules the underworld. So it's saying, do or die. Do or die kind of energy. So it invokes a certain passion that's unstoppable, in the sense that you either give your soul 100% to it, or it takes your soul away. Yeah. And when it joins forces with this taskmaster, it creates incredible amount of scrutiny, incredible amount of judgment. So where there was the whole, did you do your homework? Are you worthy? Are you capable of passing this test? It adds an element of do or die about it. So, did you do your homework? Well, if you're lying, you're going to get screwed. If you don't pass this test, you could die. So, we see it. We've seen it very strongly from January, but that force has been building now for the last couple of years. Saturn and Pluto have been in close conjunction with about 15 degrees from one another since around the middle of 2018. Yeah, it became more intense in 2019, and of course it finally became exact at the beginning of this year. And of course it exploded into this mass hysteria, mass judgment, mass panic, mass fear. As we're all being forced to justify our position here. Yeah. And of course, it's all happening in Capricorn, home of status, social importance, responsibility to the society. What are we? Who are we in the context of things? And you know, as I said, it's been intensifying now for a couple of years. Yeah, and with other forces, particularly the other outer planets like Uranus and Neptune, becoming semi-square now since around 2015. Uranus and Neptune together have this almost psychedelic effect on our soul. Yeah, they do provide visions of altered consciousness. Uranus rules insight and technology. Neptune rules the dream. Yeah, and alternative realities. Yeah, so when you put technology and the capacity to vicariously be in other dimensions together, you get this explosion of the higher consciousness coming into a sense of being able to be in certain places, in different places, very rapidly, very suddenly. Of course, you know, the social media and the technology we're using now, there's this kind of Facebook Live, the spread of that technology into all kinds of algorithms that are working in the background is leading us into this this existing on alternative planes. And partly the reason why I'm here is because of this technology, this capacity for me to vicariously be in your life without actually being in your life. It is very similar to you seeing me in your dream. Yeah? Although, and then I've heard also people texting me a lot saying that, you know, you came up in my dream and you did this and that. And I understand that. But it's also partly because we are actually present in more than this dimension, the three-dimensional, you know, surface with structure and particular physical parameters. Yeah, and as we see, like this intensification by Pluto, Saturn, to bring us into a very constrained, very intensified physical place. Yeah, Saturn Pluto is the intensification of our physical boundaries, the intensification of our status in the world. It's made it so intensely obvious that we're either in this world or we don't exist. And if we don't exist, then where are we? Yeah. A lot of people, particularly the older people who are not integrated into the technology, may at the moment be feeling very, very afraid, very, very scared, very much like it could be the end of the world for them. And possibly it might be, you know, before the next couple of years passes, we see that people who are not able to integrate into this higher level of consciousness, this altered state of being able to manifest ourselves into avatars or incarnations of ourselves into a digital way, that we will perhaps also be suffering a form of death. Yeah. Also, people who just will refuse to integrate into the physical world, the status-oriented world, are also going to be dropping out. And that's a very complex thing, because a lot of people at the moment, particularly now with Jupiter and Pluto, Jupiter's a little bit different to Saturn, because Jupiter is where Saturn is constrictive, Jupiter is expansive. So there's this sense of wanting to integrate, yeah? But when it's intensified by Pluto, there's this kind of sense of we want to believe that we are part of the world, and we are looking for ways to make sense out of it all, yeah? Fit the big picture together, yeah? And when it's intensified, it means that we either are getting a better understanding of things, or we face ourselves a sense of extinction, or being able to, somehow being cut off from it. Yeah, so you're seeing a lot of this kind of craziness going on at the moment, where people are really wanting to believe a certain narrative. On one side, you got the mainstream news, yeah, the big media networks that are feeding us this particular mainstream. Of course, it's in Capricorn, so it's telling us to be cautious, to be constrained, to be more careful, be more responsible, and all this stuff. A lot of it's got to do also with Saturn ruling Capricorn, being in Aquarius, which is all about detachment and distancing, yeah. But also, you know, there are individuals who really resonate with the Jupiter-Pluto thing, who are either so like the billionaires or the plutocrats that are coming through, that are trying to come up with ideas of solving the whole world's problems, or giving us some sense of a narrative that we can all follow. And then, of course, the other side of the coin is just massive disbelief, yeah, complete denial, wanting to believe something different. And this is where all the conspiracy theories are coming from. Some of them, as I said, the conspiracy is true, that there are forces bigger than us that are trying to, you know, herd us all into the same yard so we can be easier managed. That's kind of understandable, yeah? It's understandable in civilization to want everybody to play along with the same drum. It makes things easier to predict. But when we had the Uranus-Pluto squares from 2010, 2011 to 2015, 16, there's also that explosion. Like Uranian energy is about breaking away from the constraints of three-dimensional reality. It's four-dimensional reality. Yeah. So Uranus is like a Promethean character, somebody who brings the fire to the people and wants to create a sense of equality, or liberates them from this darkness. Yeah. So you had the Uranus-Pluto squaring, and that was a pretty major thing, because I mean this kind of an aspect it only happens every 50 or so years. It all started, of course, when Uranus and Pluto were conjunct in Virgo, around the same degrees where Pluto is hovering at the moment, in towards the middle and late Virgo, and really one is about revolution, the other one is about total control, yeah. And at this particular juncture, these two have been at war. Again, the technology that has been erupting from 2010 to 2015-16 has given people this capacity to not only see how the magnetic forces, these very sinister underground forces of power, are trying to control and break down humanity, but also giving them a key in terms of being able to liberate themselves. And in one sense that's worked, but also Pluto was not going to go away without its own ability to, from underneath the surface, be able to integrate bits of the technology that were going to look very deeply into who we were, what we think, how we like to shop, how we like to talk, how we like to associate and start to collect data. And of course, this was the inception of the AI, this artificial intelligence, which is now scanning every aspect of our nervous system to understand, what kind of person we are, not only our buying habits, not only the kind of social circles we have, but also it's getting much more sophisticated in terms of understanding what kind of a citizen we are, who we like to vote for, and what kind of psychosexual issues we have, yeah? Because those are the very, the deeper we go into understanding the DNA, if you like, of a human being and and his kind of inherited compulsions, addictions, and shortcomings, then we can sort of start to product place and feed those people with certain information that's going to really appeal to someone. So if you don't like somebody that, say, in a political party, then you're going to get more messages subliminally dropped into your letterbox to reinforce how much you don't like those people. And of course, with the whole Pluto manipulation, a lot of that information has been somehow manufactured as well. And we're starting to see it now with Jupiter Pluto. Yeah, Jupiter, like I said, is about what we want to believe, what we hope is true, in order to understand our world a little bit better. And with Jupiter Pluto, there is an incredible amount of energy underneath the surface trying to manipulate our belief systems. And we see it, of course, we see it in your Bill Gates and all these other, big picture icons, these big celebrities. Bill Gates himself, as I've already discussed, is a Pluto Jupiter conjunction person. What the intentions behind that individual are very difficult to really know. And because myself, I've worked in very large corporations, it's very common for people who are in extreme amount of power or have extreme amount of responsibility or money or whatever invested into the game to want to keep things somehow from the people that they are supposed to be helping or are helping them. Mainly because, when things are in a state of development, you don't want to divulge everything. Of course, too, it doesn't help that Bill Gates has some aspects in his chart that make it very difficult for him to come across as natural, very much like Zuckerberg. He's got a Mercury-Mars conjunction, which means that his messages tend to come out as very kind of guarded or aggressive sometimes. But that Mercury-Mars is also square his ascendant, which means it doesn't, the ascendant is how we relate to other people, how we relate to people in our environment. And when you have those planets that are really in charge of getting the message across, it means that something is not in alignment to that. And of course, you see it in his body language that he's not very capable of creating very authentic sense of being with you. So it makes people suspicious as to what his motives are. Yeah, I really actually would like to have a look at Bill Gates or somebody's chart to show you the principles behind that. But let me tell you, if you've got planets squaring your ascendant, it means that they're going to come out in your relationships in very out of time, out of sync, very awkward, very inappropriate ways. Yeah. And of course, he talks in a very kind of very direct way. He's got an intention which is actually results based. It's not about harmony and balance. So yeah, that's why he comes off as a bit of a geek. Yeah, he comes off as really like he's not 100% there with you. He's more interested in his outcome than making you feel at ease. Yeah, it's not to say that he means to cheat you or to rob you or to infect you with something weird, you know. Like there's a lot of that stuff, and I'm not taking sides here, okay? I don't have an opinion, nor do I have any vested interest in Bill Gates or anybody else. It's just my job to be able to delineate the kind of dynamics that are coming through, you know, because I see everybody as a child who was brought into this world wanting somehow to be loved. Everyone, from Bill Gates to Donald Trump to you. I don't have an opinion before or after I do the study. I'm just looking at what are the dynamics that are either helping or hindering this process of wanting to reintegrate and be loved by everyone and everything. Yeah, and we all have those conditions. We're all born with a program that says we're not good enough to be loved. We have to jump through the hoops. Yeah, and in our process of karmic development, we either need to understand the limitations and get over them, heal them, which means let go of the story, let go of the karmic complex. And to do that takes an incredible amount of consciousness. And the consciousness is about understanding what our fears and limitations are, and understanding too that they don't need to follow us around. Yeah? You just make peace with the devil and come to present tense. This is where this is really instrumental. And we are in it right now, my friends. This is the time. This is the time. Uranus and Pluto have been at war now for the last 5 years, and now it's turn for Saturn, who's now intensified by Pluto, to go to war with Uranus for the next year or two, right? We're sensing it already as Saturn is stationing around the 1st or 2nd degree of Aquarius, and this is now at the 6th degree of Taurus. It's a square, so they are at war. When there is a conflict or a square, there is an incredible dynamic pressure for those two archetypal energies to look at one another. They're not going to agree, but by going to war, we're sizing up what the other one's made of, yeah? And, you know, with each blow, we learn that didn't work, but this could, yeah? So we're working out ways to be able to firstly cope with the limitations that are coming, and secondly, come up with innovative, in the moment, spontaneous, intuitive solutions of how to overcome these kinds of limitations that are being thrust at us. One way or another, and particularly in the next couple of years, we're going to really be met with incredible challenge in terms of being able to get over the irritation of not being able to feel free and capable of doing what we're doing. Yeah. Part of it is necessary because to be free isn't necessarily a solution. You know, being free sometimes can mean making incredibly stupid mistakes and maybe burning down the farm for the sake of kind of going out to have a coffee. These are things we're going to have to understand. And what I'm seeing, particularly with people who are, you know, gravitated around this lower frequency of fear, that this sense of freedom is either something that they need to break out of in terms of the fact that they feel imprisoned by the current situation, you know, and we, as you know, we're all kind of locked up somehow. Even when the doors open, the shops start to open again, we're still going to be feeling like we're kind of stuck in something. So we can't really express our sense of freedom. We're going to find out that our limitations aren't physical. We're about to find out that our limitations are mostly cerebral, psychological. and this kind of world that we have built with all these walls and beautiful buildings and structures and institutions, establishments, little shops, big shops and conglomerates, societies, are actually just a figment of our imagination, because really in those things we're starting to lose the essence of who we are. We're starting to lose the essence of the community that is wanted by our heart. Yeah. So you can have big, beautiful buildings and big, beautiful churches, but you can still feel isolated and very, very fragmented in that if you aren't actually 100% integrated. And those structures, those institutions, those establishments aren't allowing you to express your own intuitive and uniquely guided sense of self. Yeah. So the structure needs to support the spirit. Otherwise, the structure is just what we're going to start to see now for the next few months, maybe years. Or particularly, you're going to see it now when Saturn starts to retrograde. Next Wednesday, Saturn comes to this point here in at about 2 degrees, 1 degrees or so, Aquarius, and we'll retrograde and we'll head back. And if I can just get my camera up here. Oh, you remember this, don't you? The graphic ephemeris, Angie's favorite toy. Yeah. So this is the line here. This is the line. You see a little Saturn there, and here we are at the beginning of January. Here, there is the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And then Saturn continues through into the late degrees of Capricorn. Here at this point in March, it entered Aquarius. Keeps going forward. And it gets to this point here where it becomes stationary. And where is that? Well, somewhere around the 11th of May. Becomes stationary, and we see other curves becoming stationary too. That's Jupiter there, right there, becoming stationary, only just a few degrees away, at 27 degrees Capricorn. So there's only 5 degrees difference there. So there is a conjunction still going on, just starting to form a very strong one between Jupiter, the planet of expansion, and Saturn, the planet of constriction. And as we see, like later on here in this year, is these two lines actually intersect, which means they make a conjunction. But it's all happening here at the middle of in the middle of May, and also this planet here, this faster moving one. See the curve? It's so much steeper. That's Venus. Now Venus is in a whole different sign. It's in the sign of Gemini here, and these stations create this very intensified position of this particular degree where they're becoming stationed. Usually they take a little bit of time to come through and progress into the next degree, but when they become stationed, particularly if you have planets here, there's a nice view outside my window. If you have planets in around the 1st or 2nd degree of a fixed sign, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, 1 or 2 degrees, you're feeling the Saturnian pressure, yeah? So it's like pushing you to start asking questions about what you're about. If you got Saturn squaring your Sun, Saturn squaring, why? Still waiting for the shops to open so I can get myself a decent tripod. So, look a little bit like Uncle Fester there. Saturn intensifying at 1 degree and then going back will cover all those degrees back until 25 degrees Capricorn. So it goes back to 7 degrees that it started to come into around that beginning when it entered its shadow. Yeah, Saturn entered its retrograde shadow here at the very end of January, very start of February. What was happening around the end of January, start of February? What kind of stuff was starting to materialize that was putting a lot of pressure or creating a sense of fear? Yeah, I remember that the news started to spray information about this thing in China, this fear that we should all kind of start to, at least socially, get our heads around. And of course, as time went on, the entire world was engulfed in this. We're going to be revisiting this thing now, and particularly up until the end of September, when Saturn itself goes direct again. Understanding what happened there. How did our reality shift from one level of awareness to a brand new level of awareness? Saturn had never traversed those degrees in Capricorn, hasn't done that for 29 and a half years, right? And so those degrees from 25 degrees Capricorn to 2 degrees Aquarius, anyone who has any planets, any points, astrological points in that, has had those things activated, not just once, but in retrograde, it kind of like comes knocking again, yeah? So things that you needed to deal with, things that became a matter to you, it started to swirl around in your head, particularly if you had planets that, in the late degrees of the cardinal signs, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and Aries. Yeah. So if you have planets in the late degrees of 25 or so, into the early signs, the fixed planets that I told you earlier, the 1 or 2 degrees. Yeah. Someone came knocking. Something has been at your door. Yeah, someone is breathing down your neck with the big stick, asking you questions, delving into whether you're aware. Are you aware of the rules? Are you aware of the constraints and limitations? Are you able to come up with some answers on this? Or am I gonna have to call the boys? Something's gonna break. Unless you got some answers. Yeah. If you haven't really stepped up to the plate and started to deal with these things, and even if you did, there's a whole process involved here, one that's gonna take you through the entire year, then expect another knock on the door. It might just be, hey, how you going with that? How you going with that file? Yeah, how's it going with the Penske file? I remember George Costanza was just watching an episode of Seinfeld. My housemates really like Seinfeld. He got the Penske file, and Mr. Penske kept coming up. He's going, well, how'd you go with that file? And George said, well, I got this little neat accordion style filing system, and I put things together, but I'm sure that he had no clue of what was required of him. Basically because he cheated his way into that position of assuming the responsibility for the Penske file. So if you're going through something in a very, well, let's just say conceptual or fraudulent manner, or you are actually realizing that time's up for that particular gig and you haven't adequately prepared, or you don't know your shit, you don't know how to kind of actually pass it off, because, well, just face it, like Saturn is really judge, jury, and for the most part executioner. Well, you get another shot, yeah? and you get a shot. When Saturn goes into retrograde, you get to go deep inside and have a look at how you're holding up, your own idea of who you think you are is holding up. And you may make some wonderful excuses around this time, or put up some very very subjective kind of a defense. Yeah, you might yourself start to build a wall from the inside, trying to stop the outside scrutiny coming in. But rest assured that Saturn, once it gets here to this point at late September, turns direct again, you'll have a third knock on the door. Yeah, the auditor, the great inquisitor that is Saturn, with his clipboard, and of course in Capricorn, is rather unmitigating, relentless in his pursuit to find out whether your status is real or it's just a figment of your own fear-based imagination. Or needless to say, you know, if your business has been affected, if your public image has been affected, if your sense of economic status with the bank, with the world, yeah, with your family, with your partner, if you cannot justify your position in society, and you can't do it exceptionally, in the sense that you can stand beyond any challenges that are current to our present time, well, it's more than likely, you know, something has to give. Yeah, something has to break. And the problem is, with Pluto also in Capricorn and Jupiter, it's likely that you're not going to have the glue. The glue's not there. The forces that once, because Pluto is that merging energy, yeah? Pluto provides, it's deeply psychological. It's the same force that is present there when somebody is born. It's very painful, yeah? Because you're kind of coming out of one dimension and into another. It's the same force that's there when you're teething, for instance, or you're going to school for the first time and you are letting go of mummy's hand. You have to move now into the next dimension. You're never quite the same. It's the same force that, you know, when you get married and lose your virginity, or when you become abducted and sexually abused, you know, or somebody in the family dies, or you witness a very traumatic experience when you're like on the front lines of war or on the front lines of something very ghastly. You know, there's a sense of innocence that's taken away, but also there's a merging into the much greater understanding that life is really rather, a powerful place. It can be an empowering place if you just give up elements of your ignorance or your innocence. So with all that, also in Capricorn, we're not only just being critical about our position here, our physical position, our financial position, our sense of connectedness in society in a physical sense, but also in a deeply psychological sense, those things are going away. Yeah? Pluto is already in retrograde. And again, Pluto entered his retrograde shadow sometime in the very beginning of this year, in January, almost the 1st of January. And Jupiter will be doing the same thing. Now, Jupiter in retrograde, which began his retrograde shadow here at the 17th degree of Capricorn in the middle of February, will start to retrograde here on the 13th, I think, this month. Yeah, when he gets to 27 degrees. So it's 10 degrees that he'll be tracking back, and will be going all the way to around about the same time when Saturn turns direct again. It's funny how these two are actually turning direct, retrograde and direct at the same time, because one wants us to understand the limits of our world and the other one wants us to integrate what it looks like from our personal understanding to our conceptual understanding of what those limits are about, the laws that hold us into this physical universe. Yeah. So we're kind of going back into that thing. And of course, like I said, at the end of this year, Saturn and Jupiter will become conjunct, but in Aquarius. Yeah. Aquarius is a whole different energy. Yeah. It's not so much concerned with personal status anymore. It's concerned more in the realms of how we are able to contribute equally into society. And of course, you know, we're going to see a lot of changes from now until then, mainly because our universe is starting to become more and more elevated into this alternative state of consciousness. Yeah, this higher state of consciousness, which is introduced to us by, you know, the technology that's going on, but also our intuition. Yeah, our sense of being able to see through the Maya, the veil of illusion that, you know, has been projected to us, you know, in a world prior to the technology coming through. Yeah, suddenly we're able to understand information that's coming in from fields outside of our city walls. Yeah, once upon a time you didn't really know what was going on beyond your physical universe. Yeah. We're shifting dimensions. Once upon a time, you know, humans were, you know, roaming around, and then they started to form villages. And in those villages, you saw the same 15, 20 people all the time, right? But that gets limiting in itself. And of course, that expanded into something which was more of a much bigger system, like the nation state and the cities, where there was a hive of new ideas coming through, and that was kind of expediting people's experience and created a bureaucracy and all that. But, you know, as we're starting to see, and it's happened, most of it's happened in the industrial age, where we start to trade from one nation to another, and then, of course, you know, we start to develop interest in scientific fields like chemistry, biology, atomic and nuclear physics. And, you know, when the 50s were over and 60s came along, we started to explode, didn't we, into the kind of digital age, computers, and all kinds of things came along. So by this stage now, and particularly after the late 90s, when Uranus, Saturn and Neptune became conjunct in Capricorn, again around the same degree where Pluto is at the moment, right? Isn't it ironic? That degree of Capricorn is very, very special. It seems to be a trigger point in terms of the human being, the status of the human being actually manifesting itself into forms. Yeah, and so, you know, you got from the late 90s with this harmonic convergence of Saturn, Uranus and Neptune, all in those degrees of Capricorn, a new form of human being entering the planet. Someone who was a bit more tech savvy. Yeah, someone who's able to kind of work beyond the normal constraints of three-dimensional consciousness. Yeah, it's a very special time, and what the cosmos is opening for us at this particular point in our lives is this influx of new waves of light, new waves of sound that are beyond the physical constraints. And these waves of light are causing incredible chaos and havoc. And where there's new waves of light, there's also that contingent from the old guard that are trying to snuff it out. Yeah. So that the darkness also, because the brighter the light, the more intense the darkness becomes. And so we are actually at war now. Our consciousness is at war with the darkness. And this darkness now has gripped hold of the third dimensional constraints of Jupiter and Saturn. Yeah. So on one end, we're getting this publicity campaign, this propaganda campaign from these forces of darkness which are trying to control things and keep the light from actually exposing what the source of the power is. What's the source of the power? Well, a lot of it's got to do with the laws and the constitutions and the fine print that is held together by these institutions, these structures, the world banks, the world organizations, the oligarchs, the those age-old institutions, the Catholic Church, and all those things that are trying to keep us in place with a sense of fear and a sense of limitation. You can't do this, you can't go beyond that. So yes, that you're starting to see that. Of course, there's going to be a lot of suspicion from the contingent which is wanting to look outside of these things. There's going to be a lot of wanting to read between the lines, and we're starting to see how the mainstream narrative has got it's really in a state of panic, and particularly at this particular point in time with Jupiter, Pluto in conjunction, you're starting to see how it's trying to manipulate or control or snuff out the truth. I'm seeing a lot of information coming from alternative places, particularly around this virus thing, which is coming from individuals who are perhaps either from a scientific background or they're on the front line or whatever, that are trying to tell us something. And in amongst that, of course, is those kind of conspiracy kooks as well. But I'm seeing there is a pressure from the mainstream to snuff these things out and edit people out as well. Censor, remove, redact. And of course, at the same time, they're promoting the mainstream show ponies. Those, establishment doctors, those scientists, the computer geeks, and everyone who's kind of established themselves, has got enough money to fund their own campaigns, is really putting out their word. The jury's out on who's right or wrong, but what I'm saying is that intuitively, we are actually questioning whether we are given the opportunity to make choices in terms of what status we would like to keep. It's really about status, or the elimination of the old hierarchical status, at least. Because the Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter are all intensifying now, and you will see this now all the way through until, well, at least the end of this year. Because in a way, whether these planets are going forward or going backwards, and Saturn is also going to turn back. They're all red, right? Which means they're coming back here into that final degree. Pluto's going to go back a little bit. It's not going back as far as, and probably hit to around about 21 degrees Capricorn. And Jupiter will come back to about 17 degrees. So it will make another conjunction to Pluto, and that conjunction... Where's my dear? That conjunction will happen at the end of June, and then Jupiter will continue to go all the way into September, where retrogrades. But by this time, Saturn is also coming back to about 25 degrees Capricorn. So what's happening here? These guys are very, very close. You can see them almost in a collaboration, in a collusion together here in Capricorn land. Some of the worst aspects of Capricorn have come through because of the South Node being in Capricorn for the last year or so, year and a half. The South Node now has moved into Sagittarius, and we've discussed that, the premises of what we're expecting there for the next year and a half. But these guys, they're going to be doing this business here until the start of next year when, well, as I said, in September, both of these planets turn around, start to go forward, and on December the
17th or 20th or whatever it is, they become conjunct the very early degrees of Aquarius. Of course, this guy's going forward too, but it takes Pluto a hell of a long time to get through Capricorn. Won't come out into Aquarius by 2024. By this stage, Saturn would have come all the way through and into Pisces, and this guy by 2024 will probably be around here, Aries, Taurus. Yeah, so we're going to see a lot of things, but at the beginning of next year, you're going to get this effect here with Saturn, Jupiter squaring Uranus. That, my friends, that is going to be a very tense time, particularly since so much of this has to do with our economic state and the shift of the way that we exchange physical things, and those physical things, whether they're going to be available for us, and what sort of infrastructure, what sort of business terms we're looking at. Expect more to hear from things that are of a socialist kind of nature or more egalitarian way. I don't know whether calling it socialism or even in the Bernie sense, calling it democratic socialism, because I think there's something very critical that's happening to our democracies or our systems of democracy during this time. I think actually democracy, the true democracy, died a long time ago, and what we've been experiencing now is a faux democracy, which is more like a capitalistic form. But see, because that's gotten out of hand, and because people are getting to that point now where very soon a lot of us will not be able to work in those bricks and mortar type of establishments that we were used to, we're going to have to understand that either we can turn the plutocrats and the technocrats, really, the ones that have all the power because they've got all the data, all our intelligence inside their little box, and are able to manipulate the way that we think. Everything that you're reading in the paper, everything that you're watching in the news has kind of been tampered with to give you a narrative which is, to the best of their ability, going to along a linear line. Of course, we've jumped off the linear tracks. A lot of us who are already in the present tense consciousness, this 4D, I'm here and I'm able to make other choices than that. How? Well, you don't have to watch the mainstream news. You can go to YouTube, you can go to Facebook, you can go... and even those, you notice now, they're starting to give you a very contrived, very, very organized link back to the mainstream narrative. My YouTube videos now have underneath, rather than reading who it's coming from, has got this little banner about COVID-19 that I need to find out more about the COVID-19. And I go there and it just says, wash your hands, stay indoors, don't talk to neighbors, don't be kind of like getting excited about becoming anything other than what we're telling you to, which is a little bit, that's my opinion. I shouldn't express my opinions in that, because if you're kind of also into the opinion that what the government is telling you is the holy deal, then I don't want to mess with that. That's your sacred thing. But let me tell you, right? You're only being given the mainstream thing as a last resort, not as a option of choices. Yeah. Very much like being sent to school and being told you can only study this subject, and you're only going to study this subject according to how we present it to you. Now, how would you feel about that? Because I'm looking at a lot of my history books. I've done a lot of getting rid of books lately. Not because I want to burn books, but I'm kind of like applying now the critical self, my Saturnian self, into what the 15-year-old me was forced to read. And I look at the history that's in those history books and how it's presented, not just the history, the geography, the biology, and looking at it and thinking, okay, well, I'm no scholar, I'm certainly not a historical professor or anything like that, but that's just wrong, you know, and the way it's presented there is very skewed, yeah, very designed either out of ignorance or in a very contrived way, designed to make me think about certain things, like my own national identity and versus other national identities. Things are kind of under review now. Our reality is under review. So as Saturn goes into retrograde, as Jupiter goes into retrograde, either you are taking a critical eye on the world around you, or what to determine matters to you, yeah? What is a real thing to matter, and what is a real thing that brings meaning and purpose into your life, what you will come to believe, if you believe anything at all. As these guys go into retrograde, you start to look at the world and become somehow push back. You become the judge. You become the prophet, the academic, the one who will determine in your own subjective way. And if you do this successfully, then when Saturn and Jupiter go direct in September, the third half of the year means you're probably going to sit the test and pass with flying colours, because you've got all your ducks in a row in terms of having society to answer back. Yeah? And then, of course, you know, this sets us up for the revolution that's coming in 2021, right? 2021 is not going to be any less critical than 2020. In fact, you know, when we look at the first half of 2020, we haven't done anything really. We've just been afforded an opportunity not to go to work and not to take on the responsibilities, not to go into the things that we were told all along are really, really important to be an important member of society. 2021, the first third, this first trimester, was just a period where we've had to stop playing along the establishment rules. Yeah, we haven't had a choice in that. Saturn never gives you a choice, but at the same time, it's made the establishment really, really paranoid that if they don't provide a sort of a very sturdy framework in terms of which they can manipulate us with fear, yeah, then we may not be able to. When we go back, we may not, listen. We may not play by those rules. And of course we're not. But it's up to us to go through the process of discovering this for ourselves. Now it's us that turns magnifying the stick of cynicism and criticism and fear back on society, and see how it stacks up. See how our history books, see how our economics, our accounting, our laws and our religions really stack up to what's really going on at this present point in time. By the end of the year, when Saturn and Jupiter go into Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, who's squaring from Taurus, you're going to see all sorts of things falling apart. And not necessarily in a very chaotic way, but you know, a lot of it will be, yeah, because a lot of people still won't be able to get their head around the fact that, you know, what we've been working on, the structure that we've been working on, is like those baked-in history books, yeah. They're full of misrepresentations, huge gaps in verifications and data that perhaps should have given us not both sides of the story, but all the other sides. I mean, the whole thing hasn't been looked at. History biology, science, medicine has not been looked at in a holistic way. It's taken symptoms and things to blame for those symptoms and pitched itself in a very dichotomous war. And so we get war, you know, when we're looking at things from, I'm inside the fence, I'm good, and you're outside the fence, you're bad, kind of thing. Yeah, we're not taking a holistic approach to things, and this is what the outer energies, the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are trying to teach us. So I will now take some questions here. Hope you've been able to kind of follow me. You know, it's very difficult for me to speak about the whole thing at once, and also at the same time give you an understanding of where I'm getting all this stuff from. And let me see if I can take some questions though. Saska says, 100% Ange, it's all about control, fear, manipulation, treating us like we have no brains and not capable of thinking of ourselves. Well, they are wrong. Their actions are making us to question and investigate everything, coming down to our own decisions about what's really going on. Well, that's one version, okay? And I think that's kind of the version of the awakened person. It's saying, well, I'm going to not accept the mainstream narrative. I'm going to accept that that's a choice, but I'm not going to accept the fact that it's boxed me into a corner and not giving me the space, right? Because this is already, we've seen it with this recent Saturn square the Uranus, particularly with the new moon in Taurus, which is activating this midpoint of Saturn-Uranus. Saturn-Uranus, the two together just cause irritation, yeah? One wants out, the other one wants to keep you in, yeah? So that whole thing is like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? And so, and a lot of manifestations that come out, you know, you're seeing people who have been told to stay home, told to stay in their curfews, not to go here, not to go there. And some of the people just say, fuck this, I'm going out, right? I'm going out. I'm getting my gun, I'm getting my Bible, I'm getting my whatever, you know, like people are armed with all these things that make them kind of almost feel like they're justified. Because it says in the Constitution, you can't do this to me, you know? And of course, you know, those constitutions are great, but of course they're all, like the history books, subject to our own individual interpretation. Yeah. I would like to answer another question. It's a little intense sometimes, says Lacey. It's so ethereal. I really want specifics and what I can and cannot do. And what I learned from those spaces. Yeah, well, definitely, I think, you know, in the next sort of 3 or 4 months with these planets, including Venus, you know, which is about, well, Venus only retrogrades once every 18 months or so, maybe 20 months. The reality is that we are going to have to take a more introspective, more reflective approach. So what we kind of were forced to do from the outside in for the last 3 or 4 months, now we're going to take on from an inside out point of view. So you are going to go out there, but you're going to realize it was probably better inside. In the process of all that, and particularly with the Venus, you're going to see this until the end of July, is that our value system starts to change. What you thought was important, what you thought was precious, of value to you, starts to not have the same kick. And then because of that, of course, you change your buying habits, you change your loving habits, you change the kind of relationships you used to have. Suddenly, because you've spent more time at home, you either hate your family, hate that wife, or love that wife even more. value her much more than you ever thought you did, and hate your job. You know, so things take a flip-flop. And of course Venus in Gemini can be very fickle, and we'll go through this, I don't know if I like you, I don't know if I hate you, yeah, and maybe a little bit of both, right? But in that process, things will start to get meted out. Of course, now Venus is squaring Neptune here, so all sorts of weird shit's going down. But not only squaring Neptune, it's sitting right on the midpoint between the Uranus Neptune, that soul dissociating, that kind of altered states thing that I was talking about, particularly because of the alternative worlds we've created through our internets and our capacity to do visual guided dreaming and meditation. Yeah. So, I mean, those are really high concepts. A lot of you probably don't even know what I'm talking about. And those who do know the power of being able to connect with the entire universe in a very holistic sense. Feel and breathe in the one breath with the entire universe, because of these amazing energies of light, that if you are getting into a space which is connected and grounded, not faux connected and faux grounded, like this thing that we're doing on the internet. Every time you get on the Facebook and you start scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and certain things take you away, and it's full of kind of suspicions and aspersions and fake news and all that stuff, can take you right away from being grounded. And you think you're onto like a rabbit hole, but actually what you're doing is you're getting caught up in the projection of other people's inadequacies and delusions and depressions, actually. Yeah, because a lot of the people that are putting out the conspiracy theories are just projecting their own unresolved traumas. Yeah, it's also possible that a lot of the Bill Gateses and people out there in the world are trying to do good, but just don't know how to put their message across in a way which is going to be assuring you they're not trying to manipulate and play into your trauma, yeah, into your suspicion. It's possible. Okay, I'm not saying it's true, but you really need to look into things. A lot of people are sending me stuff into my inbox. It has all various types of, conspiracy type ideas. I always at least look at them and then try to determine how real a lot of this evidence is. Some of it is real, and then some of it's not very well researched at all. And of course, that makes me think that I'm dealing with a foolish person here. And of course, just to protect myself, I do block those people. The messages, I used to block them entirely, and I'm notorious for doing that. I keep very tight boundaries. But I also need to be very careful that I'm surrounding myself with people who are going to be at least doing their homework before they send me something or try to tell me something. At least have your argument intact, because I'm going to be poking holes in it. And if I see any holes and I see that you come to me with holes, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to either demote you or sack you and send you back down to the three-dimensional plane of fear and superstition, right? So you need to be the same, yeah? Don't take anything you see at face value because someone said so, or because it appeals to your fears and it really resonates with some of your own traumas. If you're going to do that shit, you're doomed into paralysis and incapacity to actually see the light. Yeah, you're doomed to be, and there's a lot of that Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, Pluto, which is obscuring the reality and the truth. Yeah, manipulating it, trying to distort it, because not for the sake of liberating you, but actually it's trying to get someone is trying to control you. And we all love to have people believe our shit, don't we? Yeah? It gives us a sense of power. Yeah? It doesn't matter whether it's wrong, but just the matter that I hooked you. It's like the pimp down on the street, or the drug dealer. They want you to get a bit of that misery, because it's kind of like, if I'm miserable, then why shouldn't you be, right? It's not a solution. It's not a meditation. It's a medication, and it's just a lie, really. It'll get you through the next week or two, but then you're going to have to up your dosage, yeah? And so the next conspiracy needs to be more, and you're seeing the conspiracies are getting more and more and more and more ridiculous. Yeah? Focus and look through things. Don't believe a thing. Don't believe anything. Don't believe me. Don't believe anyone. Question. And the way I gauge it is, all right, now that person has left the building and I'm back on my own. How did my interaction, how did my engagement with that person make me feel? Because generally I like to come in on a neutral basis, yeah? Not be convinced this way or, convinced that way. Not get excited and not be depressed. Just open-minded. And if that person made me depressed or too excited, I know it's shifted me. And why has it shifted me? What's changed? What's changed? What was part of the engagement that has exchanged there? Has it added value to my basic energetic, or has it robbed me, taken away, limited, siphoned, drained, deflated my state of energy? It's pretty easy, yeah? You get off the phone, take a breath, ask yourself, did that person make me worry, or has that person made me feel a little more assured, yeah? Did that person just send me down into a whole rabbit hole of things that I need to start questioning? And then at some point, when I've questioned those things, realize, oh my God, that person has totally misled me. That wasn't even Bill Gates on the video, damn it. I know there's a video going around purporting to be Bill Gates, purporting to tell people that it's, they're designing a new virus to get rid of Muslims. Well, you have a look, just have a look, and here you can tell, okay, they've specifically blurred the video and messed with the sound to make it ambiguous. But Jesus Christ, we need to distance ourselves from those people who are trying to fool us, because they either themselves have got a vested interest into taking us down a particular path, or they themselves are the greatest fools. Yeah. So sorry, I'm getting distracted here and not reading any of your questions. And I know we're going well into time, but I'm seeing if as long as there's some engagement there, I will endeavour to keep asking. Well, I've taken this question from Sasko, and I think she's asking about 5G vaccinations, microchipping and stuff. Well, guys, get used to these things that are going to be presented by the mainstream. Vaccinations, 5G technology, and all this other microchipping business. Get used to that being part of the mainstream consciousness, okay? Yeah, that's a thing. It's coming. The 5G is definitely going to mess with our brainwaves. Okay, there's no doubt about it. Just like electricity when it first came out, and radio. Remember radio? How it fucked with your head? Yeah. Well, maybe not you, but when Grandma and Grandpa started listening to Uncle Adolf on the radio, they started goose stepping. Right? That fucked with their head. Right? It maybe didn't do like stuff like create the coronavirus, but it definitely messed with the brainwaves. And then, of course, television came along, your washing machine, your dishwasher, all those things. And then Wi-Fi came into the bedroom, and then blah, 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 blah. Of course, your life is being changed. The way your electromagnetic energy, how it takes ideas and personalizes them, makes them yours, and then your ideas, the ones that you think are yours, create this belief system which actually manifests the reality that you are presented with. Of course. And 5G is the next level. And then I got news for you. After 5G, there's 6 and 7 and 8, and it never ends, right? Because ultimately humans are wanting to engineer themselves into a faster, more interactive world. They want to have better internet, particularly in the country areas. They want to have a live system of bandwidth, which is high and immediate, which is able to track not just individuals, but cars, lunch boxes, milk containers, everything. It just makes perfect sense to be able to track everything in the world. All the resources have a little chip in them, so we know exactly who and where everything is, just in case we need more face masks here and more water there, less iron, more minerals, blah, 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 right? It's been happening for a while, this microchipping business. So don't think that it's new. Also, this tracking of human beings, I've spoken about already. Yeah, every telephone, particularly the smartphone, is a tracking device. And not only a tracking device, it is a listening device. It is a viewing device. The little camera and the little microphone can be switched on by any party that wants to track you. Yeah, and I'm not just talking about Facebook and Google. I'm talking about the entities that have invested in Facebook and Google that want to know more about your buying habits and your movements. Talking about the intelligence and the surveillance agencies, all those alphabet agencies. How do I know that? Because, whistleblowers like Assange and Edward Snowden have come out and basically they've worked in that environment. They've exposed all this stuff, and they know that there is an incursion upon our civil liberties. Yeah, what are you going to do about it? It's been happening for years. You're on Facebook right now, and I'm on Facebook right now. What am I going to do? I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing until I'm told that I can't do it anymore. Yeah. Which may not be long. And if you notice, I've been very, very coy. I've only really opened myself up to a very selective audience. And that was, the Cosmic Bus has been going on now since 2015. So in 5 years, I've been keeping a low key. And it's not because I'm paranoid. It's just because I feel that, I can't put that stuff out there and, expect that it's not going to alter me, yeah? Because if I feel as though that there's it's not the government, it's those people who are brainwashed into government or mainstream thinking that are going to come and try to criticize and violate. Anybody who tries to tell me how I should write, how I should think, how I should talk, and how I should deliver my truth is basically not ready. Yeah? In the old days, I used to just block everybody. I had my moderators actually just block anybody who created this kind of like, oh, so you believe in astrology, you must be an idiot. Yeah, of course I'm an idiot. Right? I'm talking to idiots, so therefore, 2 and 2 makes 4, right? But that's not what my heart wants to say, yeah? And, and I've made it very clear, if you want to engage with me, come into a special place where it's sacred and you be the judge. You let your own sense of intuition tell you at the end of this experience, when I get off the phone, how did that make me feel? Did it empower me? Did it give me more to think about that was in alignment with what I'm already thinking? Has it asked me to go and ask questions about life that I would naturally, happily go and explore on my own? Has it given me a sense of value into my life? Or has this guy just drained me with his drama? Yeah? And I say that at the end of every experience, because I don't want people to go away and believe anything. I certainly don't. I don't want you to believe anything I'm saying. I want you to ask whether what I'm saying has any relevance to you. And that you need to take into every engagement. And moment to moment, not just day to day. And this same applies with the wife, same applies with the boss, same applies with that news channel or that YouTube channel that you're watching, yeah? It's only really as good as its last 5 minutes, yeah? And then let's not write it off because it kind of said something that was out of alignment. Maybe if it's been true most of the time to you, or it's helped you, give it a chance. But if it's consistently letting you down, if it's revealed that it has some sort of ulterior motive that's very egocentric rather than wanting to, just add to the collective understanding, the holistic understanding of something, then it probably has a place in your life, but only until it starts to deflate you, only starts to let you down consistently. Same goes with the marriage. I keep telling you, it might have started off great, it might have made your world, but suddenly hasn't been able to shift you into the next level of your experiential consciousness. Yeah. Same with that job. It might have been really rewarding at the start, but suddenly your value shifted. You paid off your house. You don't need to be there anymore. You don't need to enslave yourself in the same way. It's not giving you the capacity to be creative and make decisions for yourself or whatever. Or maybe the marketplace has changed. So I think those things are really, really important in the next 2 or 3 weeks, as you're going to see sort of Venus slowing down and retrograding, and then kind of coming to a point of stillness. And also with Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, those the 3 main ones that are happening there in Capricorn. We need to start looking at beyond our own personal tastes and our own value systems. We need to ask, is this society working for us? Is the status that I have projected into that world, is it working out? Or is it just going to leave me feeling like a dangling old rock star? Yeah? Where are the rock stars? What's happened to the Rolling Stones and all those guys? The Rolling Stones contribute a hell of a lot, right? But a lot of those celebrities who made it big based on the fact that they're celebrities, they're not getting our attention. They're certainly not getting our love during this period. You've got to ask why. Yeah. Same with those billionaires. They've made a fortune. They've made not billions but trillions. How are they contributing to making this world easier? What have they actually set up that they're able to give us, in the sense that our lives are going to be easier? We're not going to be enslaved into the consumerism that they want us to keep buying into. Yeah. I mean, certainly, that Bill Gates is a real curiosity to me. I haven't made my mind up. I haven't made my mind up at all. And I haven't made my mind up about vaccines, because, vaccines have saved a lot of people. They may have killed a few people too, We're human beings. We don't always get it right. Sometimes there is, side effects to every innovation, every breakthrough. Uranus comes as a force of a tornado, yeah? It rips down the entire town. It may have very catastrophic effects to everything we knew before, but it at least has given us this arbitrary point where we need to reset, restart. And then we go build better schoolyards, technical ones. Imagine school very much like YouTube, where you choose what you want to learn, and not only choose which teachers you want to go to, but choose the experience that they give you. Imagine we put all our energy, all our educators in the world, to make these highly interactive, not 3-dimensional, but 4-dimensional environments for our children to learn. Not just our children, ourselves as well. They can do it very well, very successfully in those artificial games. Why not make it an experience that actually is helping the entire world? Every child can log into these choose their teacher, choose their subjects, choose the experience they want to have, and educate themselves in a way that's, there's tests along the way, of course, but educate themselves in ways which are going to appeal to their individual tastes and individual strengths. We haven't looked at it yet like that. Imagine some of those people who used to work in the teaching profession, or the front lines of medicine and science, actually being able to work together not be held by some regulations, and to explore the many different possibilities of healing. Yeah, where at the moment things are very compartmentalized, and there's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of money involved in the education system. It's a racket to get international students to come and pay a lot of money, and there's more corruption in just about every area now, including government and including the healing. We know about the pharmaceutical industries and the doctors and the hospitals, right? Because let's face it, this virus has shown us how short we are, and a lot of the stuff that's coming through about this coronavirus and how we're treating people has got again to do very, very suspicious about who's the administration of some of these healing facilities. And I don't want to start that actually. Questions. Question yourself, question others, question everything. It's a very good place to be at the moment. Yeah. And not just question, take down notes, write down stuff, and check your notes. Check to see how verified these things that you are repeating to yourself are, and maybe also check that maybe you need to kind of change the script a little bit. Yeah. Most of all, open yourselves up to this amazing experience that's happening from the cosmos now, people. This is it's a phenomenal time to be here, and it's a phenomenal time to be waking up to the here and now, and open up your hearts with a sense of compassion and love, even though it is kind of sometimes likely that you're going to hear things that you don't want to hear. Sometimes, and just being able to listen and to hear people out gives us this understanding of where we are in the universe. Yeah, you don't have to buy into anything or anyone. All right. This includes the government and those big bad boys with the Kevlar armor on. All right, you don't have to buy into any of that. Yeah, you don't have to buy into the fear factor and the greed and the manipulation. You can always say no. And that doesn't necessarily need to be cruel. It can just be an act of compassion. Say, listen, I've looked at your crap. I've asked you a few questions. You can't verify. You can't answer it. But I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say no. No, thank you. Right? So this is the approach you can take for your 5G and your vaccines and your all that stuff. If you haven't been given some form of a discourse, some sort of a civilized attempt to debate something and know more about it, then for fuck's sake, shut that shit out. You don't have to take it. You don't have to take anything. But you don't have to get on your high horse and get political about it either, okay? Let everybody make their choices as well, okay? If you can provide information, fantastic. Do it. Go. But provide information. Don't provide just crap you heard which is unverified. That's not providing information. You're not doing yourself any favors, and you're certainly not going to win me over. All right. All right. So again, I've gone well over time. I would like to thank you all. You are the creator of this amazing dream that's coming into this planet at the moment, and you, in cooperation with everybody, are co-creating the dream. Yeah, the dream, not your dream or somebody else's dream. It's the dream. It's the same dream for all that we're experiencing simultaneously. If he doesn't respect the fact that we're all got the capacity to create this amazing universe together in the way that we're best suited to do that, then it's not the dream. It's a distortion or some form of a manipulated lie. Please don't play into that. Come back to center. How did that make you feel? You be the judge. My darling friends, until I see you next time. Thank you for joining me.